Hey everybody, welcome to the prop shop again. I'm Bill, prop maker, costume maker, and your guide to making things out of EVA foam. That's right, we're continuing our trend of doing foam fabrication tips. Last time we did a little bit on bevels, and the time before we did a little bit more on doing really cool foam edges. Both of those videos are linked right here, so feel free to go check those out if you want to up your foam fabrication game for your prop and costume making. Today we're gonna go talk about the details, all those little lines and curves that you carve into your foam armor to make them look really cool and really intricate. For example, we have some of those lines and stuff on my Lord Shaxx costume right here, and all of these little design elements are very easy to do, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. The tools for these are extremely simple and cheap. Really, you just need some sharp knives. And if you can help it, either get a whole bunch of replacement blades for those knives, or what I like to do is use a sharpener so that as soon as the knife is dull, I can sharpen it up again and continue cutting. The first thing you want to do is to draw out your designs on your foam. Whatever thing you're trying to replicate for your armor or for your prop making, just draw it out right on your foam. All of this is going to get painted later, so it doesn't matter if you can still see the ink on there or the marker. It'll be just fine. Then once you have your design laid out, you can cut your piece out normally the way you would do it with a knife or a saw like I've shown you before. However, some of these elements on this particular design are a little bit more complicated. For example, this piece on the side here has some sort of inlay cuts that you gotta cut out with a nice clean 90-degree angle. So to do so, I like to use, again, a really nice sharp knife and cut from the corner straight down into the mat. I do this for the sort of side parts, but the bit on the inside of the foam there, you've got to be a little bit careful because it's easy to overcut and damage the piece of foam that you want to keep. So I take the knife and I push it straight down, trying to make sure it goes down at a perpendicular angle to your foam, and then I draw it through the foam, and when I get to the edge, I like to kind of saw it a little bit and meet up with that edge that I cut earlier. Like most things, this requires a whole lot of practice before you really get good at it, but it's worth it to put in the time because you can get some cuts that look really nice and even look kind of machined. A lot of the interior designs for your foam can be done the same way. I like to always start at a corner and cut away from it. That way I can push the tip of the blade into the foam, get a nice sharp corner. Then I just work my way around. Again, starting at the corner and pulling into the edge. For this particular piece, I'm only scoring it. I don't necessarily have to cut all the way through. I just go around the perimeter cutting out the edge. In this case, since I just scored it, I can hit it with a heat gun and those edges open up, showing a really cool design below. Now, sometimes you don't get those corners perfectly. There might be a little bit of material left over. Not a problem, just take a really sharp little knife and trim that piece up a bit, clean it up, hit it with the heat gun again, and voila, you are all done. These types of cuts and scoring can be done in a whole bunch of different designs. You can do rounded edges, you can connect little pieces, you can get really, really intricate with this sort of work. Again, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. Now you can, of course, do these sort of interior cuts all the way through your foam. Again, the big thing to remember here is you want to make sure that you cut at a perpendicular angle to the foam surface, unless of course you want to have like an interior bevel. Now, if you don't do that, if you want nice straight cuts and you kind of go a little crazy and the blade wanders a bit as you cut it out, when you pull that piece out, you'll see that the inside is a little bit mangled. Since you can't see in there when you're cutting it, it's easy to sort of not get a couple passes to line up, kind of mangle the bit on the inside. Again, just make sure that blade is nice and perpendicular, cut really slowly, and you'll be making nice clean cuts at no time. For some of these interior cuts, if they are curved, I like to use a curved cutting blade, poke it all the way through, again keeping it nice and perpendicular, and then sort of saw your way around the corner very slowly, but it'll get the job done. If you take your time and use the right tools, then you can have nice clean interior cuts. Now once you have cut out a small piece like this, you may or may not want it to just be removed. For example, on my Shaxx armor, those side panels there, I cut them out, push them in a little bit, and then glued them in place that way. This is a really great way to add just a little bit of depth to the piece of armor that you're making, and it's really quick. Again, you want to cut it out, making sure that those edges are nice and perpendicular, and then you just got to push it in, to the depth that you want. And then I like to hot glue it from the back, and nobody is the wiser. You've got a really cool looking little design element on your piece. I did something really similar with my Mass Effect armor years ago, except that instead of having a nice sharp edge around that indent, it kind of just looked like it was dented in. What I did for that was, first I cut out the piece that would go into the hole. I traced out my design and then I enlarged it just a little bit. And then I trimmed it out using sort of like an interior bevel cut. It doesn't need to be really pretty. The inner surface is going to be hidden. I just made sure there was some extra room in there for it to get mashed into the hole we're going to make later on. This piece that got cut out got cleaned up a little bit, and then I went and cut the hole for it. What you end up with is a piece that's a little bit too big that you can mash into that hole, and what ends up happening is that piece gets folded in a little bit. You have a nice little indent. Of course, once it looks good, you can go ahead and glue it in. For this particular one, I used Barge contact cement to glue it into place. And then once it was in there for good. It's not coming out, and voila, I've got a really cool looking indent piece in my foam armor. And there you go, guys, a whole bunch more foam armor and costume making tips for your arsenal. Thank you guys so much for watching these videos. Again, like I said, we've got a bunch more foam tips for you in a handful of other videos right over here. If you're new to the channel, of course, subscribe, and you can catch all of these whenever they come out. And if you're looking for a whole bunch more foam armor making tips and tutorials, I've got a book out. It's called the Foamsmith Book, and it's available in both ebook and print version at punishedprops.com. And I'm working on another one. That's right, Foamsmith 2 is gonna be out pretty soon here, and it's gonna be all about making foam weapons. All of your sci-fi and fantasy sweet freaking foam weapons. So stay tuned for that. Get out there and make stuff, you guys. Thanks for hanging out.